This morning, a machine screamed until you woke up. You silenced it, and in that instant, your entire day was already decided. Where you had to be, what you had to finish. How many hours belonged to someone else before you'd even opened your eyes? Now rewind 50,000 years. A man opens his eyes to morning light. No alarm, no schedule, nowhere he has to be. He owns a spear, 2 animal hides, and a fire that's still warm from the night before. He sits up, stretches, and asks a question you have never once been free enough to ask. What should I do today? Your instinct is probably fighting this right now. Ancient life was brutal, you're thinking. Short, desperate. Every second spent just trying to survive. That's the story you were taught. That's the story almost everyone believes. But the evidence says otherwise. And it was buried in the ground the whole time, waiting for someone to dig it up. Pause. Here's the mystery. You live surrounded by machines built to save you time. Washing machines, dishwashers, cars, every single one exists to hand you back free hours. So how does a man with none of that end up with more free time than you? What did he actually do all day that you can't? Where did all your time go? To answer that, we have to start underground. Somewhere in the Middle East, archaeologists pulled 2 human skeletons from the same patch of earth. They lived a few thousand years apart, close enough to compare, far enough to belong to 2 different worlds entirely. The first skeleton is tall, bones thick and strong, teeth worn but healthy, barely a cavity in sight, joints clean. This was a body that ate well, moved constantly in different ways, and never got ground down by repeating the same motion for years. The second tells a harder story. Teeth riddled with cavities, a spine showing arthritis, the exact kind of damage you get from bending and grinding through identical movements, thousands of times, year after year. And this person died young, so which is which? Most people guess the strong, healthy skeleton belonged to the modern farmer. Tools, stored food, a roof overhead. And the broken one? That must be the caveman, scraping by with a spear. It's the opposite. The strong skeleton belonged to the hunter-gatherer. The wrecked one belonged to the farmer, the person from the era we call progress. This isn't one strange pair of bones. Archaeologists have run this same comparison at sites across the globe, and everywhere farming replaced hunting and gathering, the pattern repeats. Shorter lifespans, rotted teeth, worn spines. Your skeleton is a diary. It records exactly how hard you worked and how well you were fed, and it holds that record for thousands of years. These diaries agree on one thing. The people with nothing but spears were living easier lives than the people who came after them with farms and villages. Pause. But bones can only prove the work was lighter. They can't show you what a normal day actually looked like. So let's walk through one. You wake at dawn on your own because your body got the sleep it needed. Last night's fire still burns at the center of camp. People sit around it, eating leftover meat and nuts, talking about where the water's good and where fresh tracks were spotted. That's the entire morning meeting. And when a decision gets made, everyone makes it together. Today, nobody hunts. The last kill was 2 days ago, and there's still plenty of food. A few people go gather plants. You spend the morning on your tools, sharpening your spear, working a stiff hide until it softens in your hands. You do this because skill earns respect here, not because anyone ordered you to. By early afternoon, everything that needed doing is already done. 2 days later, the meat runs low. Today, you hunt. Real hunting looks nothing like the movies. You never outrun the animal. It's always faster than you. Instead, you follow it at a steady walking pace, for hours. Your body sweats and cools itself while it moves. The animal can't. It sprints, overheats, weakens, and finally collapses. You walk up to it. You were never the fastest thing out there. You were the only thing that never had to stop. The hunt takes the whole day. It's the hardest work this life demands. But one good hunt feeds the camp for days. Tomorrow, the free time starts again. Pause. At this point, you're probably thinking this sounds too good to be true, like a fantasy someone invented about the past. Fair enough. One man had that exact doubt, and he decided to prove it one way or the other. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Lee walked into the Kalahari Desert on the edge of Botswana, one of the harshest places on Earth a person can live. He went to study the Juhuansi, one of the last groups still living the old way. No farms, no stores. Lee expected to find misery. That was the textbook story. That life before farming meant working every daylight hour just to barely survive. But instead of assuming it, he counted it. He followed people with a notebook and a stopwatch, tracking every hour, day after day, for weeks. He came back with a number nobody believed. 17 hours a week spent getting food. Not 17 hours a day. 17 hours across the entire week. About 2.5 days of labor. Every hour after that belonged to them. For comparison, you'll cross 17 hours of work by Wednesday afternoon. Maybe the Juhuansi were just one lucky group in one lucky place. Scientists had that same doubt, so they ran the count again on the Hadza in Tanzania, the Ashe in Paraguay, the Martu in Australia. 3 groups, 3 continents. Every single time, the number landed between 15 and 20 hours a week. Pause. If this video is opening your eyes to how differently our ancestors lived, hit subscribe, because what comes next is even stranger. The most important hours of their week weren't the hunting hours at all. It's afternoon, and camp has slowed down. People sit in the shade, talking. They play with the kids, groom each other, pick through hair while conversation drifts. Beside you, someone drills tiny holes through seashells to string into a necklace. Someone else carves a design into bone. A design with no purpose except to look beautiful. This isn't a guess about how they spent their time. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found shell beads over 70,000 years old. Small sea snail shells, carefully drilled, made to be worn. The coast was a long walk from where these people lived. Someone made that trip, carried the shells home, and sat for hours drilling holes with stone tools, just to make something beautiful. In 2008, researchers in a German cave dug up a flute carved from a vulture's wing bone, 40,000 years old, with 5 finger holes spaced for real musical notes. Someone in the Ice Age understood music well enough to build an instrument and had enough free time to learn to play it. But the beads and the flute point to something bigger. This world has no money, no police, no courts. So ask yourself, what actually keeps you alive when the hunt fails, or you get sick, or you break your leg and can't walk for a month? The answer is other people. That's the entire safety net. If they like you, they feed you when you have nothing. If they don't, nobody owes you anything, and you starve. So every lazy afternoon of talking, joking, and grooming was an investment in the only insurance this world had. Anthropologist James Suzman found Juhuansi adults spend around 6 hours a day on pure social time. Because in this world, your relationships are your bank account, your hospital, and your pension. All at once. Pause. Then the sun goes down, and the best hours of the day haven't even started yet. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Weissner published a study that might explain where human culture itself comes from. She had recordings of Juhuansi conversations collected across decades, and she sorted everyone by a simple question. Was it said in daylight or at night? Daytime talk was practical. Where the tracks were, which plants were ready, who wasn't sharing fairly. Basically logistics and gossip. But at night, around the fire, everything changed. 81% of firelight conversation turned into stories. Myths about how the world began. Tales of ancestors who did impossible things. Jokes that ran long into the dark. None of that comes from a scared, hungry mind. Those stories only surface when your stomach is full and your body feels safe. The fire wasn't just cooking food and keeping predators away. It created the first hours in human history where the mind was completely free. Wisner argued this is exactly where culture was born. Not in the middle of the work, in the quiet hours after it. And when the fire burned low, even sleep worked differently. Before artificial light existed, humans didn't sleep in one long block. Historical records and modern sleep experiments show the same pattern. About 4 hours of sleep, then an hour or two awake in the middle of the night. Calm, thinking or talking quietly, before drifting back down for another 4 hours. Today, you wake at 2 a.m. and call it insomnia. Your body might just be doing the oldest thing it knows, pause. So now you've seen the full picture. Food took a few hours. People took the afternoon. Stories took the night. Sleep came in two calm halves. That was the human schedule for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, about 10,000 years ago, somebody planted a seed. And that's the exact moment your time started disappearing. It happened in the Fertile Crescent, when humans began planting grain and keeping animals instead of hunting and gathering. On paper, farming looks like an upgrade. More food, more control. No more 6-hour chases after antelope. But farming is a trap. Here's exactly how it closes. Farming produces more food. More food means more babies survive. The population grows. A bigger population needs more food, so you plant more fields. More fields mean more work. And then the lock clicks. Once your group is too big to feed by hunting and gathering, the old life can't carry you anymore. You're in permanently. So as every generation born after you, the workload explodes. Plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting, storing, guarding, season after season, forever. Remember that second skeleton from the beginning? The rotten teeth, the worn spine, the early death. That's what this new life did to people. The first farmers worked harder and lived worse than the hunter-gatherers before them. And they couldn't leave. The trap kept tightening. Big farming villages produced specialists. Potters, toolmakers, weavers. Specialists needed trade. Trade built cities. Cities brought soldiers, priests, tax collectors. And eventually, a brand new idea entered human history. For the first time ever, your hours could belong to someone else, sold off in exchange for food you no longer knew how to find on your own. Nobody stole your time in one dramatic night. It was traded away slowly, one generation at a time, in a deal no one alive today ever got the chance to refuse. Pause. The alarm that screamed at you this morning is just the latest payment on that deal. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans worked 15 to 20 hours a week, and the skeletons in the ground prove it. The afternoons went into craft, beauty, and the relationships that kept everyone alive. The nights went into firelight stories, where culture itself was born, and sleep came in two calm halves. Then farming arrived. The population trap locked shut behind us. And step by step, our hours stopped being ours. Today, you'll spend around 90,000 hours of your life working. You make art only if there's anything left of you after your job. They made art in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. You network for career advantage. They spent 6 hours a day with people they loved, and it counted as survival. You chase some finish line, success, savings, retirement, where you finally get your time back. They were already standing on that finish line. They were born on it. So ask yourself this: if a man with nothing but a spear and a fire had more freedom than you do right now, what exactly did progress actually give you? If this changed how you see your own daily grind, subscribe for more stories that flip history on its head. Every morning, they woke up with no alarm and no schedule. and ask themselves the one question you've never been free enough to ask. You're working your whole existence towards someday retiring into that life. They lived it from their first day to their last, and they would find it very strange that you traded it all away for a screaming alarm and a promise.